Sir, step back. First class isn't for people like you. The words came out sharp with no hesitation, just cold precision. Captain Sarah Mitchell didn't even glance twice. She flicked her hand toward the rear cabin like she was swatting a fly. You'll need to verify your priority status before we allow you to take that seat, or try economy. They may have space for you. A few nearby passengers looked up the way people do when they sense something wrong but aren't sure if they want to get involved. One of them, a white man in his early 50s with slicked back hair and a silver watch, leaned over and shoved a briefcase onto the middle table. "Let's keep this area clear, all right," he barked. His voice wasn't loud, but it was loaded with money, with entitlement, and with the assumption that the man standing in front of him didn't belong. That man, Dr. Julian Hayes, took it all in silently. He wore a simple gray button-down shirt, casual navy slacks, and loafers that had seen better days. There was nothing about him that screamed billionaire, nothing that hinted he was the owner of the very jet they were standing in. And that was exactly the point. Julian was running a test, an internal ethics and conduct protocol at Zenith Aviation, the luxury charter company he had quietly acquired the year before. He wanted to see how the staff treated passengers who didn't fit their assumptions of wealth and power. So he boarded as a last-minute addition, dressed modestly, his real identity hidden. But this wasn't just a protocol failure. It was something uglier. Captain Sarah Mitchell, mid-40s, once flew for a major airline that Zenith Technologies acquired in 2024. She had survived the merger, but barely. The tension in her voice wasn't just about policy, it carried resentment. And now she saw a casually dressed black man stepping into a world she didn't think he belonged in. Julian Hayes handed her a boarding stub, the decoy pass created for this test. She held it between two fingers like it might stain her gloves. "Unverified," she declared, snapping it back into his chest. "Security will be notified if you don't return to your assigned section." He didn't move. He glanced at the briefcase now resting where his own bag had been, watched the man next to it, Richard Holt, recline like he'd just conquered something. Richard was a private equity executive with a long list of failed companies and a longer list of connections. He looked at Julian the way a man might look at a mistake in his office lobby, dismissively. From across the aisle, a younger passenger tilted his phone slightly, capturing the moment. Liam Chen, 31, a well-known travel blogger, recognized Julian instantly, but said nothing. He had seen this kind of treatment before, too many times. But this was different. This time, the man being targeted wasn't just another passenger. He was the person who had redefined private aviation. In 2005, Julian had been a rising star at an aviation firm in Denver. Despite his record-breaking design for fuel-efficient aircraft interiors, he was repeatedly passed over, his ideas credited to others. By 2018, he'd walked away from corporate aerospace and launched Zenith Technologies. In 2023, he'd bought Zenith Aviation and its fleet of Gulfstream jets outright. Now, in 2025, he stood in his own aircraft, being asked to prove he belonged. Sarah turned toward the cockpit, muttering to her first officer, "I'm flagging this guy, he's delaying our departure." And then, louder to the cabin, "Folks, apologies for the holdup, we're resolving a seating issue." Murmurs rippled down the aisle. Julian's face remained calm, but his jaw tightened just slightly. This wasn't just unprofessional, it was targeted, strategic. Richard Holt stretched his legs and flashed what looked like a first-class elite badge. "I specifically requested privacy," he said. "I assume you'll resolve this." Sarah nodded as if she'd just received a corporate directive. Julian quietly reached for his phone and tapped once. "Anna, activate Protocol 3, he said into his earpiece. On the other end, Anaka Sharma, his executive assistant, answered with no hesitation. "It's set, sir." Her tone was calm, clinical, but beneath it was fire. She had seen this happen before, and she knew what was about to follow. Liam leaned over just a little and whispered, "This isn't right. You know that." Julian didn't flinch. "Log it, Liam," he said, voice low and even. Liam tapped on his phone, composing a post for X. "Zenith Aviation crew profiles black passenger as non-priority. No ID check, no grace, just removal. In 2025. On his own plane." The post went up within seconds. Notifications followed like sparks in dry grass. "We'll need to verify you before this can go any further." Sarah's hand hovered near the wall console. "Or you can leave. Those are your options." "Or," Julian raised an eyebrow, "you verify your own conduct first. You're going to answer for this." Emma Walsh, the flight attendant, stepped forward holding a tablet. She said nothing, but her fingers danced across the screen. Julian saw her briefly glance at the passenger manifest, then tap something twice. A few moments later, a notification came through on Anaka's console back at Zenith headquarters. "Passenger unauthorized, recommend removal." No explanation, no due process, just a digital accusation in a closed-loop system. Back on board, Richard slid a folded note onto Julian's seat before standing up and sauntering off. Julian picked it up, unfolded it, and read the words in looping ink. "Try budget flights." He folded it again, tucked it into his pocket, and turned toward Sarah. "You're destroying everything this company stands for," he said softly. "1 second at a time." From the cabin's forward display, a ping sounded. Liam had posted a photo of the note, and in less than 3 minutes, it had racked up over 2,000 likes. Julian's face remained composed, but beneath the calm, the pressure built like steam in a sealed chamber. Passengers were shifting, whispering. One of them, a black tech founder named Malik Jordan, watched with quiet intensity. He recognized the pattern, too. And then Julian did something that caught everyone off guard. He reached down, adjusted the cuff of his sleeve, and said, "If you thought this was going to end quietly, you've misread the moment." His smart ring vibrated softly. Protocol 3 had reached the escalation threshold. First Officer Thomas Blake didn't waste time. As soon as Captain Sarah Mitchell waved him over, he stomped down the aisle like he'd just been given clearance to remove a problem. "He's not on the verified manifest," she said loud enough for several passengers to hear. "And if he's refusing to comply, we may need to escalate." Thomas didn't ask questions. He stopped in front of Julian and squared his shoulders. "Sir, you'll need to leave this cabin immediately or be escorted out by security." His voice was gruff, old school, with a tinge of aggression that made the cabin go still again. Julian remained seated, his posture calm but alert. "Understood. Then verify me." He tapped his smart ring once more, sending a secondary ping to Anaka's console in the Zenith command suite. At that same moment, Emma Walsh pulled up the passenger log on her tablet and manually flagged Julian as unauthorized. No badge scan, no ID check, just one entry. Not on record. It was enough. Sarah turned to Thomas and gave a slight nod. Meanwhile, Richard Holt smirked. "This is what happens when you let just anyone think they can buy a seat in here," he muttered half under his breath, but loud enough to be caught on video. Liam Chen, still filming, glanced up from his phone. He typed quickly. "Zenith Aviation pilot accuses black man of being non-priority. No verification, just removal threats. Witnessed it myself. Discrimination in the skies." Within seconds, the post had crossed 200,000 views. Comments flooded in. "Name the airline. Post the faces. Tag FAA." And then a reply from an aviation journalist. "DM me. We'll run this tonight." But the humiliation wasn't over. Sarah turned back to Julian and said with mock pleasant tone, "You could always apply for a maintenance role, sir. We're always looking for people who understand the insides of a plane." A few passengers chuckled uncomfortably. Richard laughed outright. Wouldn't be the first time one of them walked up here thinking they belong. A woman seated across the aisle gave him a sharp look, but said nothing. Julian stayed seated, unmoved. You're violating every standard your badge is supposed to uphold. His voice was steady, measured, but not quiet. You're no longer following procedure. You're profiling. From her phone in Zenith headquarters, Anaka Sharma watched the tampering unfold in real time. Emma's input had triggered an alert in the internal compliance system, an alert meant for cases of data manipulation. She picked up the phone and called Julian. "Sir," she said, "Emma just logged you as unauthorized without ID confirmation. I'm locking the log, filing an internal complaint now." Julian nodded, not needing to say anything. She continued. "And Thomas? He's citing a security violation. I'm escalating to Elena." Elena Ruiz, Zenith's senior counsel, was already scanning the incoming reports. Back on the plane, Thomas leaned toward Julian and growled, "You can either leave quietly, or we'll call airport security." Julian's reply was soft. "Call who you need to, but start by calling your conscience." Liam, sitting nearby, was typing again. "Zenith First Officer threatens passenger with security. No cause given. Tension rising." Elena's voice buzzed through Julian's earpiece. "Julian, I'm initiating Protocol 303. All internal logs are being preserved. Do not leave your seat. Their entire chain of actions is being recorded." At that same moment, the display screens in the forward cabin began updating with news alerts. Bloomberg had picked up Liam's earlier post. The headline scrolled across the ticker, "Passenger mistreatment on Zenith aviation flight. Viral post suggests racial bias." Sarah saw it. She walked down the aisle, grabbed Julian's briefcase, which had been returned to the aisle seat, and moved it to a nearby cabinet. "Unclaimed item," she said coldly. Julian watched her, then looked at Richard, who offered a smug shrug. Richard then stood and made his next move. "This gentleman boarded without clearance," he said loudly to the crew. "I saw it myself. Check the security footage." It was a lie. He knew it. Everyone who had been watching Julian board had seen him enter quietly, escorted by a gate agent. But the accusation, once spoken, stuck like oil on water. "That's false," Liam's voice came out louder than expected. "I watched him board. Gate agent let him in. He didn't speak to anyone." Sarah ignored him. "Passengers, please remain seated. We are investigating a manifest discrepancy." Julian, they just reported you as a trespasser to the terminal security." Julian didn't blink. "Let them come." Anaka added, "This has moved to full protocol status. All posts are being archived." Liam's content, it sounded official, clean, sanitized, but every word reeked of evasion. Back at Zenith HQ, Elena typed faster. "We're filing formal misconduct charges against Sarah and Emma, Thomas too. B crossed 500,000 views. Bloomberg tagged us. Reuters just requested comment. I'm routing media to Elena." Inside the cabin, the tension was rising by the minute. Richard leaned toward Julian and said, "There's nothing you can do. They've already decided what you are." Julian replied without looking at him, "And they'll soon remember who I am." Emma paced near the galley, watching the front screen scroll with news coverage. She whispered something to Sarah, then tapped again on her tablet, reclassifying Julian's seat as vacant. Liam caught the moment in a photo. Flight attendant just marked Dr. Hayes' seat vacant while he's sitting in it. "Tell me again, this isn't coordinated." That name, Dr. Hayes, hadn't been spoken aloud yet, but Liam had known all along. He kept it quiet until now. The next post was explosive. Breaking. Passenger being profiled is Dr. Julian Hayes, CEO of Zenith Technologies. He owns the company that runs this flight. It took only 90 seconds for that update to hit trending status. Sarah turned toward the cabin screen just in time to see the image of Julian appear beneath the headline, "Tech Billionaire Allegedly Profiled on His Own Jet." The cabin shifted, quietly, uneasily. Julian didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked Sarah in the eye and said, "You just profiled your employer, and you did it in front of the world." The cabin doors stayed closed. Security hadn't arrived yet, but the situation was unraveling quickly, and the cracks were now visible. "Julian," Liam looked down at his phone and whispered, "Your name's everywhere now." Julian leaned back slightly. "Good. Then let them watch what happens next." Captain Sarah Mitchell stood near the front of the cabin, her jaw tight, eyes darting from Julian to the flight display screen above row 1A, where Bloomberg's headline still flashed. "Billionaire CEO allegedly profiled on his own jet." But instead of backing down, she doubled down. She walked the aisle with the kind of composure that masked fear with authority. "We've had enough disruption," she announced. "I am now requiring financial verification for continued occupancy in first class." Her voice was clipped, measured. She turned to Julian, who hadn't moved from his seat. "Sir, I'll need to see proof of payment or credentials right now." Julian didn't speak immediately. He just stared at her slowly, deliberately. He was no longer just a calm observer of his own test. He was a man being publicly stripped of his dignity. First Officer Thomas Blake joined her, his voice louder and more hostile. "You're refusing to comply with policy. That's grounds for removal." Julian didn't rise. He simply asked, "What policy requires a passenger to disclose financials to sit in their assigned seat?" Thomas stepped forward, fists clenched. "I said, get off the plane." A hush fell over the cabin. Liam Chen was still filming discreetly from his seat. Other passengers had their phones out now, too. Nobody was speaking, but everyone was watching. And then, Richard Holt, arrogant, smug, and emboldened, stood up and waved a platinum badge in the air. "This is what a priority passenger looks like," he shouted, pointing at Julian. "And that is what an imposter looks like." He chuckled, cruel and confident. "Try economy, sir, if they'll even let you on at all." Julian sat still. His expression didn't change, but his silence spoke volumes. Emma Walsh, holding her tablet, called toward the galley. "Security's on the way. We've flagged this as disruptive behavior." She made no eye contact with Julian as she logged a final note. "Subject failed verification. Escalate." That's when Lucas Grant appeared. Early 40s, tall, white, dressed in the dark blazer worn by Zenith Aviation's onboard security leads. He walked with purpose and stopped at Julian's seat, towering over him. "Sir, I need you to put away your device and vacate this seat immediately," he ordered, eyes cold. When Julian didn't respond right away, Lucas reached out and smacked Julian's tablet off the tray. It clattered to the floor with a sharp thud. Gasps rose from surrounding seats. One passenger, a middle-aged woman in 3D, put her hand over her mouth. Liam typed furiously, "Security lead just hit Dr. Hayes' tablet. Physical contact made. This is assault. #Zenith fail." Julian raised one hand slowly, not in surrender, but in caution. "You just crossed a line," he said softly. "We've been authorized by the captain. Move." Lucas didn't flinch. From her desk, Elena Ruiz's voice crackled in Julian's earpiece. "Julian, initiate protocol 303. Without breaking eye contact with Lucas, Julian tapped twice on his smart ring. A signal bounced back to Anaka's console in Zenith HQ. Within seconds, a full internal log backup was initiated, including audio, video, and manifest data from the flight. Meanwhile, Anaka scanned Richard Holt's badge entry and frowned. "Sir," she said over the line, "that priority badge Richard just waved? It's fake. His credentials expired last year. I'm logging it now. Julian nodded silently. Elena added, "We're filing a passenger ethics violation with his firm." Back in the cabin, Sarah folded her arms. "You're now being detained under internal aviation protocol." Her voice was proud, firm, final. "You're nothing but a tech guy with a seat you didn't earn." Richard leaned forward, sneering. Julian replied in a voice so low it was barely audible, but every word landed like stone. "You've all made your choices. Now you'll live with them." "We've got confirmation from the pilot. Remove him." Emma stepped forward to hover beside Lucas. At that moment, Anaka texted Liam directly. "They're violating corporate protocol. Post everything. Let the public see." Liam didn't hesitate. He hit upload, a 2-minute video stitched together the denial, the badge flash, the verbal mockery, and the slap of the tablet. It was raw, undeniable. Within minutes, the video was trending worldwide. Bloomberg issued an update. Forbes reposted Liam's footage. Screens aboard the plane reflected the updates live. In bold letters, CEO Julian Hayes profiled, threatened, and physically confronted on his own jet. But the final blow was still coming. Julian called out calmly, "Anaka, patch me into Elena." A moment later, Elena's voice came through on speaker for all to hear. "This is Elena Ruiz, Corporate Counsel for Zenith Technologies and parent holder of Zenith Aviation. We are confirming that Dr. Julian Hayes is listed on this flight as part of an internal audit. Any actions taken to remove him constitute a breach of internal protocol and will trigger immediate legal review." Gasps filled the cabin. A woman from row 1C whispered, "He owns this airline." Sarah's face froze. Thomas took one step back. Lucas looked at Emma, suddenly unsure. Julian sat quietly. Then, with no anger, no drama, just clarity, he said, "I am the CEO of Zenith Technologies. This aircraft is mine, and your time on it is over." It wasn't just a statement. It was a shift. Power had returned to its rightful place. As Elena added, "Expect formal notices by the time this flight touches down," Liam posted his final video of the hour. They humiliated him. They denied him. They hit him. And now they've been exposed by the man they thought they could erase. Captain Sarah Mitchell's face was pale beneath her professionally applied makeup. The live news ticker above seat 1A now cycled through phrases like "CEO targeted aboard owned jet" and "Zenith Aviation staff under internal review." Still, she pressed forward, unwilling to surrender control of the cabin. "Lucas!" she barked, voice tight with panic masked as command. "Remove him immediately. This is a policy breach." Lucas Grant, still standing beside Julian's seat, hesitated. His hand hovered just inches from Julian's arm. He could feel the shift in the air, not just from the headline, but from the murmurs rising through the cabin. Passengers were no longer passive. They were filming, whispering, questioning. Then Richard Holt stood up again, almost triumphant. "Why are we delaying this?" he said, voice sharp. "The man doesn't belong here. Get him off this plane." He turned and looked around, hoping for agreement. Instead, silence met him. A silence that felt like judgment. In seat 2B, Malik Jordan, an emerging black entrepreneur and one of Julian's hidden guests, finally spoke up. "You keep saying he doesn't belong. But I wonder, Richard, what makes you so sure? Is it his clothes, his skin, or that he didn't bow to you?" "Stay out of this, sir. You're not involved." Sarah shot him a glare. "I am now." Malik folded his arms. From Zenith headquarters, Anaka Sharma watched every second through the aircraft's live feed telemetry, her fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. "Julian," she said through his earpiece, "Emma just locked your flight log. It's a forced override on her tablet. She's trying to erase your record of being on this jet. Julian's eyes narrowed, though his face remained calm. Tell Elena. Already on the line, Elena Ruiz responded immediately. I'm unlocking the override and securing all internal logs under legal protocol. That's a violation of corporate and FAA policy. Her voice was steady, controlled, but beneath it, fire burned. Inside the cabin, Julian finally stood, slowly, calmly. Then he faced the crew and said, You want to escalate? Fine. But before you do, ask yourselves, are you absolutely certain you know who you're talking to? Sarah took a step back, uncertain. She glanced at Thomas, who was visibly sweating. He's bluffing, she said under her breath. But Thomas wasn't so sure anymore. Captain, he muttered, maybe we should wait for confirmation. Julian ignored them. He turned his attention to Lucas. You grabbed my device. You raised your voice. You put your hands on me in front of dozens of witnesses and multiple cameras. Do you still believe I'm just another passenger? Lucas blinked. Then slowly he stepped back. Taka. Just then, one of the cabin displays changed. Liam Chen had uploaded a full timeline of the incident titled, Minute by Minute, How a Billionaire CEO Was Profiled on His Own Jet. In less than 30 seconds, it was trending globally. Reuters posted it. NBC picked it up. Aviation International, a watchdog publication, issued a damning bulletin. Zenith Aviation staff under fire after discrimination incident. High-value clients begin pulling bookings. Sarah's mouth twitched. I don't care who you are, she snapped. You're violating chain of command. No, Julian cut in, calm but firm. You violated trust, dignity, and corporate ethics. And now you're about to be held accountable. Anaka's voice came back through the line. Julian, Protocol 3 is finalized. Internal HQ just approved the full disciplinary pathway. Your orders are now binding. Elena added, You are officially recognized as acting authority on this flight. Security will stand down upon directive. Before Sarah could speak again, Julian turned to her directly. Captain Sarah Mitchell, First Officer Thomas Blake, Flight Attendant Emma Walsh, Security Lead Lucas Grant, your actions today have failed every standard this company upholds. Effective immediately, your services are terminated pending legal review. He paused. Richard Holt, you're banned from all Zenith aviation charters indefinitely. The announcement stunned the cabin. Passengers froze. Phones filmed. No one moved. You can't fire me. I'm the captain of this flight, Sarah laughed, brittle and incredulous. And I'm the owner of this aircraft. Julian didn't blink. My authority supersedes yours. Elena's voice echoed again, now on loudspeaker. This is official. All orders given by Dr. Julian Hayes are supported by Zenith's legal office. Terminations are valid under contractual violation clauses. Sarah's eyes darted to the flight deck as if seeking backup. But Thomas had collapsed into his seat, face in his hands. Lucas stared at the floor. Emma clutched her tablet like it was a life vest in open water. And then came the twist no one was prepared for. Elena, Julian said, voice still calm. Has corporate reviewed their complaint history? Elena's voice turned grim. We have. Sarah Mitchell has 20 logged complaints for racial profiling over the last 3 years, sealed by internal manipulation, all hidden by Thomas Blake. It's over, Anaka added. Complaints were blocked from review, but the audit caught it. They're exposed. Liam posted again. Hidden history of profiling uncovered. Crew fired. Passengers cheer. CEO reclaims the sky. Underneath the post, a passenger comment read, Simply watching justice happen in real time. Julian took one last look around the cabin, then returned to his seat. The jet, though still grounded, had already taken off in the only way that mattered. Julian re-entered the cabin moments later, no longer in his modest shirt and slacks. Now he wore a tailored navy suit with the silver Zenith Technologies pin gleaming just below his collar. His walk was quiet but commanding, like gravity had shifted and followed him instead of the earth. Conversations stopped. Phones rose. Even the sound of the engines humming outside seemed to fade. Captain Sarah Mitchell, First Officer Thomas Blake, Flight Attendant Emma Walsh, Security Lead Lucas Grant, you're all relieved of duty. Effective immediately, he said, turning to the passengers as his voice deepened. You are witnessing the termination of Zenith Aviation personnel under violation of corporate ethics, profiling, and breach of internal security protocols. All actions are being logged. Gasps and murmurs erupted. Phones filmed everything. The story had fully flipped. This is outrageous. You're not even... Emma stepped forward, eyes wide, gripping her tablet. Julian raised a hand and cut her off. I'm Dr. Julian Hayes, CEO of Zenith Technologies, owner of Zenith Aviation, and the man whose identity you tried to erase in front of these witnesses. He turned and looked at Liam. Thank you for logging the truth. Liam nodded, his fingers still moving across his screen. He's bluffing, Thomas muttered. But then Elena's voice crackled over the cabin's intercom. This is Elena Ruiz, legal counsel for Zenith Technologies. The orders issued by Dr. Hayes are authorized. Full corporate oversight is active. If any of the aforementioned crew remain on board past this statement, they will be trespassing. Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came out. The blood had drained from her face. Thomas sat down heavily, the fight gone from his body. Lucas removed his badge and handed it to a quiet passenger before walking toward the rear galley. Emma looked around as if someone might still come to her defense. No one moved. Julian turned again. Richard Holt. The man straightened in his seat, eyes narrowing. You're not a crew member, Julian said, but your behavior, documented and confirmed, violated our passenger code of conduct. You're hereby banned from all Zenith Aviation charters effective immediately and permanently. You think you can just erase me? Richard barked a laugh. I'm not erasing you, Julian replied. You did that yourself. I'm just enforcing the consequences. Liam posted a clip with the caption, Dr. Hayes doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't retaliate. He delivers consequences like a mirror, calm, clear, and final. At that moment, the forward screen updated with a headline from Reuters. Zenith CEO fires entire jet crew after being profiled. Identit. He revealed mid-flight. A subheadline followed. New allegations surface. Hidden bias complaints covered by flight officers. Elena spoke again over the comms. We've just concluded an internal log audit. Captain Mitchell has 20 bias complaints over the past 3 years. 17 of those were suppressed or dismissed by First Officer Blake. Emma Walsh manually adjusted at least 8 passenger logs in the last 2 quarters. Mr. Grant violated physical conduct policy during today's incident. All violations have been locked and submitted to FAA and EEOC review. The cabin turned into a courtroom in real time. This isn't fair. You set us up. Sarah's voice cracked. No, I set a standard. Julian turned to her calmly. You decided how to meet it. Or in this case, how to fail it. Passengers applauded, some quietly, others more openly. One woman clapped with tears in her eyes. A man near the rear said, Thank you. Another leaned forward and whispered, This changes everything. Julian looked around, nodding once. Then he addressed the cabin, not just the guilty crew. Zenith Aviation was built on one belief, that luxury doesn't excuse bias, that comfort doesn't come at the cost of dignity. Today was a test, not of me, but of this system, and now it will change permanently. Anaka's voice came through his earpiece. Julian, you need to hear this. Elena just found a pattern. Emma and Thomas worked together to flag passengers with a code marked visual mismatch. Julian's jaw tightened. What does that mean? Elena answered immediately. It was an informal term used to quietly label passengers who, by their appearance, didn't match expected profiles of wealth. Most of them were people of color. The cabin went silent. Julian took one breath, then said loud enough for every row to hear, "That ends today!" Liam posted again. Visual mismatch. That was the term they used. But Julian Hayes didn't just match the profile, he built it. Then he burned the old one to the ground. Richard stood again, pointing at passengers with a shaking hand. "You think this is justice? You're just tearing things down." A man in row 3 said calmly, "No, he's cleaning house." Emma tried one last time, her voice trembling. "I have a family." Julian looked at her with eyes full of quiet power. "And how many passengers did you try to erase without a second thought?" She had no answer. She turned and walked off the plane, past cameras, past silence, past her own undoing. Sarah followed, still shaking her head. Lucas walked behind her, already dialing a number he knew wouldn't connect anymore. Thomas remained seated a little longer before rising with a face full of regret and shame, the weight of years bearing down. And Julian, he stood tall in the aisle of his own aircraft, no longer underestimated, no longer hidden, no longer patient with systems that failed to see the people in front of them. The cabin didn't cheer loudly. They didn't need to. They had just witnessed something greater than revenge. They had witnessed justice. Julian remained standing in the center aisle, the cabin now quiet, no longer tense, but reflective. The entire crew had exited in silence. The mood had shifted, not just because the offenders were gone, but because everyone on board now understood they were part of something larger than a simple confrontation. They had watched a man reclaim his dignity and then use that moment to rebuild the sky itself. Julian raised his left wrist slightly. With a single swipe across the surface of his smartwatch, he activated the Zenith Equity Program, an internal reform initiative he'd developed months earlier. The system, now live, would trigger real-time audits across Zenith Aviation, mandate comprehensive diversity training for all flight personnel, and install AI-powered equity monitors aboard every aircraft under his company's flag. Screens throughout the cabin lit up one by one with the program's icon, a silver horizon line cutting through a golden sky. It wasn't just a logo, it was a declaration. Passengers looked on in awe as Julian turned to face them. Today wasn't about one man being denied a seat, he said, voice calm but resolute. It was about a culture that still believes appearances determine worth. That ends now. Zenith Aviation will become the gold standard, not just for luxury, but for fairness, for humanity. Liam Chen, still filming, posted a photo of the smartwatch screen lighting up, captioned, "Julian didn't just fire the crew, he rewired the system. The Zenith Equity Program begins now." From Zenith Technologies headquarters, Annika's voice rang in Julian's ear. "CEO channel active. PR department is holding press calls. Corporate just issued a statement confirming the firings and launch of the program." Elena chimed in as well. "All log entries verified. FAA notified of immediate reforms. The FAA Deputy Director just acknowledged Zenith's initiative on the record." At seat 2B, Malik Jordan leaned forward and asked quietly, "Julian, is this going to reach beyond this plane?" Julian turned toward him and nodded. "Yes, every passenger deserves to fly without fear of being judged. This plane is the first step. The rest follows." But the shadows of resistance hadn't fully cleared. From Annika's system feed, a red flag appeared. "Julian," she said urgently, "we've just intercepted data." Emma attempted to upload falsified compliance reports last week. She was part of a covert crew group that manipulated audit results to hide discriminatory behavior. Elena immediately overrode the data stream, freezing the accounts linked to Emma and Thomas. They had a pattern, Elena said grimly. They used code phrases, flagged passengers without documentation, and buried internal reports. We've secured the files. Julian took one breath, then addressed the cabin again. For those of you wondering if this was isolated, know that it wasn't. A crew faction within our company attempted to distort internal records, hide complaints, and operate without accountability. That ends today. We've launched True Sky, an AI audit system that flags inconsistencies and ensures no misconduct is ever buried again. From the back of the cabin, a middle-aged woman whispered, "He didn't just stop the plane. He changed the flight path of the whole company." Elena added, "True Sky is now installed across all Zenith aircraft. Internal corruption is being rooted out." And Julian, that last speech. It's being streamed live by 3 news outlets. Liam posted again. True Sky is live. Zenith isn't always come loud. Sometimes it walks down the aisle, calm and unstoppable. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content.